I wanted to be the biggest, the baddest. I literally buy a kilo every day for a week. We ended up buying 2 vans that had a compartment underneath it that held 250 kilos in it. This guy calls me up. He says, Lewis just sent you 1,000 kilos.
James Beasley Jr. is the biggest drug trafficker in San Francisco history. At his height, he was moving 1,000 kilos of cocaine every month directly for Pablo Escobar and the Medellín Cartel. He grew up in Hunters Point on the south side of San Francisco, surrounded by a family of gangsters. James began his criminal career in 1980 at the age of 17, selling dimes of coke outside of a neighborhood liquor store. And by the time crack exploded in 1985, James was clearing $8 million a month selling literal tons of cocaine throughout the San Francisco Bay Area and up the west coast of the United States. He was moving products so fast, he even got summoned down to Colombia to meet with the bosses personally. Finally, in 1989, after years of chasing him, the DEA finally arrested James. And what made his case so extraordinary is that the feds were never able to put a Kingpin charge on him. They never found any product. So they were forced to charge him with tax evasion, the same thing that they got Al Capone with, and something that's almost unheard of in urban drug kingpin cases. Still, James spent the next 27 years inside federal prison. He's now been home for over 10 years, and he is a multimillionaire again. This time by buying and flipping houses. He is the self-proclaimed foreclosure king of the Bay Area. Stories like James's are so remarkable and rare that it was an absolute privilege to get him on the podcast. Make sure to go get his book, Deep Rooted, San Francisco's Most Notorious Crime Boss, available now on Amazon and on James's website. And for a bonus chat with James, where he tells us war stories from the feds, as well as his real estate secrets today, head over to the Patreon, patreon.com/TheConnectShow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an all-time great episode, a true OG, James Beasley Jr., right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
I'm the youngest person in the history of the United States to ever be charged with a tax evasion. There's no cocaine confiscation in my case, not 1 gram. So my grandmother's telling me, turn yourself in, and she convinced me to turn myself in, October 26, 1989. I didn't see the streets again until May 4th, 2015.
So why do you think the Bay Area produces so much game? So many players, so many pimps, so many big-time drug dealers. Why are black people, specifically from San Francisco, from Oakland, why do you just have this swag?
That's interesting.
What are the roots of that?
Well, for me, mine is in my DNA. That's why the book is Deep Rooted. So for me, the reason why I named the book Deep Rooted is because the game is so deeply rooted in me. You know, it's a tale from the Bay. They say, you know, it's not on me, it's in me. I'm one that can really, truly confess to that. It's in me. It was born in my DNA. It's in my DNA.
It's from your father.
It's from my father, my grandparents. You know, that's where it started from.
Could you tell us about that? Your
Even
grandparents?
though my grandparents were hard-working, blue-collar people. They did no wrong. You know, I don't think my grandmother, you know, ever stole anything. You know, like when we were kids and you would steal a piece of gum or something, she always stressed she never stole anything. She was just a hardworking woman. And my grandfather worked at the shipyard, H&H Shipyard. And he eventually developed gas and lead poison from cleaning out the gas tanks. Oof. And so they got a nice settlement from that, and that really, you know, helped the family out a lot. But before that, it was just straight from the hustle. You know, from, you know, it's, the tale is five new girls married men, and then they took on their last name. You know, that's, so that's why you have the Newts, the Tatums, the Beasleys, the Nelson, Davis, and Ogans.
Yeah, so you come from Hunters Point, San Francisco,
yes.
South Side, San Francisco.
Yes.
And those 4 families, it's a bunch of different cousins and siblings, and pretty much everybody was hustling. By the 70s, everybody was into heroin and rackets.
Right.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Like, I think you were helping your father young.
My father had, my father, and I talk about it in the book. My father, James Beasley Sr., was like revolutionaries. He cutting edges of the Black Guerrilla family, the Black Panthers. So a lot of, in that era, from my understanding, it wasn't like slick, and it was more like rough. You know, they use the term a hog. You know, we say he's a boss now, but back then they were hogs.
Yeah.
And they preyed on people. And mostly the prey was on white contractors coming to the ghetto and building. And kind of the same thing that you hear about in New York, you know, with the mob extorting the contractors and stuff. So that's what my father did for a living. You know, he extorted the truckers and everybody that anything to do with construction, he extorted them.
Incredible.
Yeah. You know, and, you know, he would go into meetings and people would say, hey, James, you know, you ain't got no business here. You don't have, and he always carried a bag, a leather bag, like what we call them today, pouches. And he would go in that bag and pull that gun out and put it on the table. This is all the credentials I need. Wow. And they were shaking in their boots and the contractors would pay him. Wow. And ultimately, well, he had a friend named Morris Phillips that was head of redevelopment. And redevelopment was an agency that was over most of the urban housing and building. So, you know, he would tell him, hey, this guy just got a contract up here. That was his prey. He would
I'm going to go see him then.
Yeah, he'd go see him, shake him up. He'd pay him.
Imagine how cutting edge that was. That for the gall of a black man in the 60s to go extort Italian mafia style, go extort white developers.
Yes, this was in the 70s.
70s. I
mean,
early
70s.
That's very audacious.
Yes. So he went to federal prison. He went to federal prison for a trucker by the name of Chet Smith, dimed him out. And told the feds on him, and they indicted him and Morris Phillips, and they went to federal prison. So while he was in federal prison, you can meet anybody that you want to meet. So if you want to learn how to rob banks, you can hang with the bank robbers. You want to sell dope, you go hang with the dope dealers. You know, you want to go to be a pimp, you go hang out with the pimps. You want to be a forger, go hang out with the forgers. And it's called game. You know, I never describe prison as prison. I describe it as college. So he met a guy who had abundance of China white, and he was on a furlough. He was on a furlough leaving McNeil Island, which is up in the state of Washington, and he was on his way to Boron. Boron was out in the middle of the desert, Barstow. And in the middle of that, you know, he met, you know, the supplier, handed him off, met me, handed it to me, and I took it back to his girlfriend, and we went in business. And she showed me how to package it up. But I really, at that time, I was really, really young, and I wasn't supposed to be in the game, so I was more like a delivery guy.
Wow. But you were delivering bricks, I think kilos of...
Ounces. It was
okay.
ounces. It was ounces.
And who's supplying China white in the early 70s? Was that a Mexican thing, or was that a Asian thing?
It was Mexican.
Wow. Did you have any idea the magnitude of what it was that you were dropping off?
I was only 16 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I was 16 years old going to high school. You know, I had a 1972 Cougar. You know, it was really clean, and I'm going to school with, you know, $1,000 in my pocket.
like that's normal.
Exactly.
It's crazy. Wow. So your dad's now hustling. He's doing less extorting. He's using you.
Well, he's in prison. He's in prison.
So you're running this for him.
Me and his girlfriend Renee is doing it. And then he comes home on furloughs.
What's a furlough?
Furlough is where the prison lets you go home for about a week, couple of days, and then you report back.
They don't do that anymore.
Hell no. I wish they did. I missed that.
Yeah, too many cats running off.
Right.
You know? Wow. So he's running that. And when he's in the feds, that's where he joins the Black Gorilla family?
No, it was before.
Okay.
Before that. He did a bunch of time in the state prison.
Can you tell us about who the Black Gorilla family is or were?
From my understanding, because it's before my time, it was a black black revolution gang.
Yeah.
From prison.
Right. George Jackson.
Started in the 70s, early 70s, or might even be the 60s, late 60s, you know, from George Jackson.
Yeah.
Is what I
think it was Soledad Prison.
Yeah. There's the book Soledad Brothers and so forth.
Yeah. A lot of those gangs, or they wouldn't call themselves gangs probably, you know, the Black Panthers and stuff, they started out revolutionary, but then the dope money came in and inevitably
took over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it took over.
Exactly.
Because there wasn't no money. It was very little money in being a bully or extorting somebody. Right. And it was more money in drugs.
Well, there's not a lot of money in marching either. And
exactly.
You know, sticking up for your rights.
Yeah, they wouldn't get nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's really what it is. The key to the reason there's so much game and so you guys are so fly and individualistic is because San Francisco and the Bay Area is that. It's always been the counterculture of everything that happens in America. Like it happens first in California and like the epicenter is the Bay.
I think a lot of it too is because we don't have gangs.
You don't have gangs, you're right.
We don't have gangs. So it's like we not marching against each other, you know, representing a color, you know, or a neighborhood. You know, now it is now, but in my era, it was not, you know, and I think a lot of it is, it was game. You had to really be a sharp guy, be able to think, you know, you had to use this more than this or more than this. Now they're using these and they're using this. They don't use this anymore. They don't use this. You know, so we had to come from what you know, what the Pimps place say, we had to come from the hip. You know what I'm saying? They don't do it no more.
Why do you think pimping is so, why do the best pimps come from San Francisco? Like you grew up also with a lineage of pimps, I think, in your family.
Yeah, Ronnie, my mentor, Ronnie Newt Sr.
Like how can you not be a pimp with a name like Ronnie Newt?
Exactly. Ronnie Newt was about 17. He had 18 holes, Rolls Royce, house in Oakland Hills with an elevator in it.
At 18?
At 18 years old. And I was a little shorty. I was probably about 6 or 7. I had a baseball glove and a ball in it, and I'd be hitting it, talking to him, man, I want to learn how to pimp, man. I want to learn, teach me how to pimp, man. Teach me how to pimp, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Why did you decide ultimately, I mean, obviously there's probably more money in drugs, but why did you did some dudes from your era that you grew up in choose to just pimp? They said, nah, fuck the drugs. This is what I'm going to do. This is my hustle. Did you grow up around dudes like that?
Yeah, and you know, in the book, you know, I talk about my short stint of pimping. It just didn't pay, you know. Right. At that time, for me, women, the whores were using drugs. Their pimps were using drugs. So sex became cheaper. And there was no money there. So I said, hey, man, let me sell what they like.
I see.
And that forced me more in the direction of the drugs.
That makes sense. So as more of these prostitutes became drug addicted, they lowered the price that they would sell themselves for.
Yes.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, and you said most of the pimps ended up as dope fiends.
They ended up on the stuff themselves.
Yeah. I think being a pimp's a really lonely life. I mean, imagine just trying to deal with one woman. Oh, no, now I got 20. That sounds like...
Well, I never wanted to rely on a woman to take care of me.
Yeah.
You know, if she don't go to work, sell sex, then I don't make any money. But I know them drugs is going to sell.
Yeah.
Even bad drugs sell. Yeah. Somebody going to come get it.
That's it. So you started out, when did it become cocaine? I think you were about 16 or 17 when you first
like
got
I said, originally I was just dropping off ounces of heroin.
Yep.
for my dad and Renee. And then that switched over to a small stint of me selling marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to stand out on the corner. So I had a couple girls selling weed for me, and it was kind of slow and, not really producing what I wanted. I probably made more money dropping off stuff for my dad during that time than I was making off the weed with the girls.
Mm-hmm.
And my first child, Monet Beasley, she was just about to be born. And I had a cousin of mine, Ricky Page, told me, hey, man, Pampers and Milk is going to wear your ass out. You got to come up with something else. What? What am I come up with? He said, I don't know, but you better figure it out. You better figure it out, dude, because this ain't going to get it. I was working construction, and I was like, you're right, man. You're right. And so one day I'm driving through the projects and I see two old classmates of mine that went to Catholic school with me, a guy named Lance Moore, another guy, Thomas Makeup Man Harris. And I saw them out there and I stopped and had a conversation with them. And what are you guys doing down here? And they said, man, we're selling coke. Come down here and join us. I was like, nah, I'm not going to come down here. I don't want to step on you guys' toes or anything. This is your area. You guys carve this out. Do your thing. Man, it's room for you, man. Come on down. And that was the turning point for me.
Yeah.
I went down. It wasn't on the main street, 3rd Street. It was on a little side street, Fitzgerald, Bob's H&K Liquor, which is still there.
Wow.
And all the real stumped down junkies hung out on this corner. And I went down there and I started selling dimes.
And this is like 1980?
This is 81.
Yeah, so you're about 18 years old.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. Please don't skip ahead. This is not an ad read. This is about a young man who needs our help. His name is Matthias, and he's a longtime fan of the show, and he's suffering from something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a rare illness that causes all kinds of horribly painful symptoms in the body, like craniovascular instability. And what that is basically all the ligaments and the muscle that hold your spine, your head, and your neck together are coming apart. Imagine that. It's a horribly brutal, life-debilitating, life-threatening illness. Now, there's 2 ways to treat this. The first is with surgery, but nobody wants to do that. It's incredibly invasive and dangerous. The doctors would literally have to open up Matthias's back and work around his spine. And you can imagine the peril that puts him in. They don't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. The better option is getting injections. Matthias needs 5 rounds of injection shots, and he's going to get them from a spinal clinic in Colorado. It's one of the best, in fact, one of the only clinics in the world that treats craniovascular instability. And it's going to cost him about $14,000 per round of injections. So he needs to raise about $60,000. And of course, insurance doesn't want to cover it. Matthias has raised close to $20,000, so he's almost a third of the way there. I've already donated myself, and so I am humbly asking you guys to help out if you can, as little or as much as you feel comfortable with. I'm telling you, the best way to get ahead in life is by giving. I didn't start getting all of these great things happening to me from the universe until I started to give. And I love opportunities to help out, not just a fellow fan, but a fellow human being. The government's not going to help us. Insurance companies aren't going to help us. We have to help ourselves. I've checked out Matthias's paperwork and his doctor's recommendation. It's going to be at the GoFundMe site, so you can see that this is not a scam. It is all legit. To donate, click the GoFundMe link in the description of this episode. I thank everybody in advance, and so does Matthias. All right, let's get back into it.
Back then, you're selling coke. This is obviously predates crack by like 4 or 5 years.
Crack wasn't even. Well, let me take that back. Crack was around, but it wasn't called crack.
It was rock cocaine.
It was rock cocaine. It was rock cocaine, and they weren't. A lot of people didn't know how to cook it. And it wasn't sold in the rock form. You had to buy it in the powder form and get somebody to cook it for you in the little small vials.
Yeah. So no, that's the reason it didn't take off sooner in the 80s, was that nobody wanted to.
Nobody knew how.
The drug dealers didn't want to risk.
They didn't know how to
powder.
do it. They didn't know how to cook it.
Right.
They had to learn. They had to learn how to cook it.
And I think by the time that it became a mass marketed product in like 85, you were already a kilo dealer.
Oh yeah.
You never even with crack.
Not until much later. I mean, I think really what happens after the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles is when things just took off for everybody, you know, because you got those people coming from all parts of the world into Los Angeles for the Olympics. And those athletes are trafficking drugs in here.
Really?
Things got cheap.
Wow. You think so? You think that was the turning point?
I think that was a turning point.
Wow. But I wonder who was like the first neighborhood. Who was the first? It must have been L.A., the first drug dealer to say, no, I'm going to rock this all up.
Most definitely Los Angeles.
Right. Most
definitely. You know, if you have any inkling of the drug game, you got to give that to Los Angeles. That goes to them.
Yeah. Okay. But in 1980, 81, you're in front of a liquor store
and I'm selling dimes.
Tens. Yeah.
I'm selling dimes.
Is it everybody or is it just to black people from the neighborhood?
It's from anybody that pulled up. I mean, it was more of a heroin corner.
Right.
But we, you know, like I said, my friend Thomas and my friend Lance were selling coke. They were like probably one of the first people down there to sell coke.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, we were young. And so it's like, hey, you know, you're coming down to get your heroin, you get some coke too.
Right. And I think you moved a lot of the heroin junkies away from opioids altogether
to coke.
So you're actually doing a good thing.
By some people's standards.
Do you think so? Do you think that is true though? That a lot of the heroin junkies, the fiends, moved over to cocaine?
I do.
Wow.
I do.
Wow. So, but you came up quick. Like you were just sharp. Like you were always ambitious.
Well, it was a numbers game for me.
Yeah.
It was numbers. It was numbers. And guys didn't understand that. You know, like even now, you know, man, I do my best thinking when I'm asleep. You know, it's like, you know, I talked to a guy in a podcast that says, man, you know, dementia runs in my family. I haven't gotten it. The brain still works. My daughter Jamie says, Dad, that brain's still working, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, baby, my brain still works.
What were your ambitions when you first realized, oh, this is good business at 18 years old? Like, did you have a goal with the drug game? Or were you not thinking? Were you just for the moment?
Of course I was. I had, of course I had Ronnie Newt, you know, as a measuring stick, you know, and I'd saw the things that he had done. And then I had a cousin, you know, Charles Tatum Sr. I had saw what he had done. And then, you know, we had some old timers, you know, these guys been, you know, dead a long time, but he was probably Colwayne Wales, rest in peace. Willie Buck Henderson, rest in peace. Those were some of the larger guys, you know, in my father's era.
Yeah.
And I looked up to those guys, you know. Right. I grew up admiring pimps and players. Yeah. You know, I didn't admire Willie Mays and Willie McCovey. Yeah. You know, or anybody that sung, you know, like R&B singer and stuff. That's
so you wanted to be wealthy off the game.
I did. You know, my thing was I wanted to be you know, the biggest, the baddest.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So you have two. How do you grow this little thing? Tell us how you really came up. You had to get the better price. You just kept getting better and better prices on coke and more of it. So tell us about how that grew.
Well, I was going to a cousin of mine, Goldie Gold, one of my favorite cousins, and he showed me how to read a scale, ultimately cut, you know, coke. Because what Renee, she showed me, but I wasn't allowed to touch it. I just observed, and I was more, like I said, a delivery guy. But Goldie Gold actually took me in, and you put this much cut on, this much coke, this is how you fold the seals, and this and that. But his prices wasn't that good to me. So it was kind of forcing me out the business, and I was paying too much.
Yeah. I think an ounce was like $2,200. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that was just it was to everybody. It wasn't just, we're cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, this is my cousin. I'm going to charge him 16 or 17, 18 and charge everybody else 21. My price was the same as everybody else. I couldn't make any money. I couldn't get any customers. He had them all. I couldn't get them.
Yep.
So I had another cousin, Chill, who really helped me out, who really helped me out a lot,
Yeah.
and everything I bought, he gave me. I went down to a quarter ounce. I would buy a quarter ounce for $580, $525. He'd give me another one. And I get to a half ounce. He'd give me another one. I got a whole ounce. I would buy 1 ounce. He'd give me another ounce. I got 2 ounces. Right. I buy 2 ounces. He'd give me 2. I got 4 ounces now. And it's really taking off. Because now I'm in a position where I don't even have to cut it anymore. I just realized that I'm selling dimes. That's $10. And I got 10 of them in a gram. That's $100. Yeah. Who's getting $100 a gram? Nobody.
Right.
I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to grow, and now people are migrating to me. Mm-hmm. And they saying, hey, Young Bees, he got good coke, is cheap and is good. Mm-hmm. So now I got a couple guys that's running for me on the block. Now I can get off the block.
Right.
I can just package up stuff for them, drop it off, and I can go and start venturing off into other areas in the city that's trying to find people just like me. Mm. That's what I did. Like even when me and my guys went out, it's crazy because I said, we'd be at parties and chicks be all over. I'm not interested in chicks. Mm. I'm interested in guys. I'm interested in customers. Mm-hmm. I want new customers. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for someone in every part of the city. Mm-hmm. So I can introduce them to what I have. And then by the same token, they have crews.
Yes, that's right. San Francisco, no gangs, just drug crews.
Yes.
It was just crews of cats. And your goal was to just network. Everybody was networking.
Everybody was networking. My thing was to get me somebody in every area. And it wasn't, and I didn't operate, they worked for me. They were, I like to say, they were independent contractors. Mm-hmm. They bought, I sold. Yeah. I gave them a product that was cheaper than anybody else could give it to them for. So people say, well, what did you do for me? I gave you a product at a cheaper market that you couldn't get from nowhere else. That's what I gave you.
And it was a perfect storm because as more and more coke comes in and gets better from South America, more people are using. Therefore, more people are getting into the game, want to get into the game as to sell. So now you have more customers to sell your good coke to. And it's just, you just see this juggernaut bubbling. And I think you finally met, well, your first Latin American connection was really like, I believe how you got into like the Kilo game, right? Uh-huh. What were their names?
Sal and Edgar.
Right. And who were they?
They were some guys that I met through a friend named Louis. Louis was the first person. Chill was giving me good prices, but not like a Latin could. Mm-hmm. And so one day I'm sitting in front of a barbecue spot, famous barbecue place in San Francisco, Vic and Betty's. Mm. And I have a cousin named Craig Ogans, and me and him sit in my Corvette and we're talking. He sees the guy says, hey man, I'm on the 16th. And so he comes, hey man, this guy wants, man, I'm not selling that dude no cocaine. Are you crazy? I said, how do you know him? He said, he introduced Charles, which is my cousin, CT Jr. He said he introduced him to his connection. I was like, oh, for real? By this time, Charles is in jail. So somebody has to fill this void that he left, So I'm like, man, I need to get that place. I need to get that spot, But how do I do it? I got to break away from the A team and come up with my own. Mm. And that enabled me to do it.
This connection.
I went on and sold the guy Louis a 16 for coke. Mm. I saw him the next day. He wanted another one. And I went to his house, and lo and behold, his wife and I had went to elementary school together. No, he wasn't the cops. And then they stayed 2 doors from my auntie. So boom, he said, man, how much you paying for this stuff? And I told him, oh, man, you're paying too much. You know, I remember the first, I think the first kilo I bought a half a kilo for $21.5. So that's basically $43,000 a kilo. And he's telling me, man, somebody's kicking your ass. I can get it to you for 32. Huh? You're lying. No. He goes and gets me a half a kick.
Wow. And 32,000 for a brick back then was unheard of in the early 80s.
Unheard of.
Right.
Nobody even had the money to buy a brick.
Right.
So what I realized, actually what I was paying per ounce. So ounces were $2,100. I started selling them for $1,800. So now the competition, the A teams, they're selling them for $1,800 now.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, well, I'm going to $1,500 now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And by the way, people should know the A team is comprised of your family members.
Yes.
Who became your Coke competition.
Yes.
Which is very strange.
Yes.
They were just a group of Beasleys and Newts and
well, they were Tatums. They were Tatums, and they took their childhood friends and put them together and created the A team from the TV show.
Right.
A team.
That's it.
So I have a guy, one of my main guys, Donnie Robinson. Donnie started the B team, which is the Beasleys.
Right, I see.
So Donnie, during this time, everybody was wearing those Letterman jackets. You know, no, I'm sorry, starter jackets, the starter jackets.
Yeah.
And Donnie went got everybody a starter coat, blue, trimmed in gray with B team across the front and your street name on the back of it and passed them out.
Right. Yeah, you're that blatant.
Yeah, we were that blatant with it, you know.
But the A team wouldn't give you the family price.
No.
So you couldn't come up. They were kind of holding you down. So you said, I'm going to go over to the B team and start basically my own organization.
That's what I did.
This is a message from Mando telling you to wash your stinking ass and then use Mando whole body deodorant anywhere and everywhere on your body that's got sweat, grime, and funk. Mando is America's #1 whole body deodorant. You guys know Mando by now, okay? You can put it on your grundle, under the bottoms of your feet, under your ball sack, on your face, after your ball sack. You can put it anywhere on your body and it leaves you smelling fresh for up to 72 hours, okay? And it's got none of that crap that you get with the leading brands at the grocery store, okay? And it's good for you. It's baking soda free, dye free, paraben free, aluminum free, and vegan. Once again, it is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap. What? 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor was 5 out of 10. That's a fact. With Mando, the average grundle odor level is 0 out of 10. You want to try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now? Well, check it out. It's not only through this podcast. You can go to big box stores now and get it. These guys are blowing up. Get it at Walmart, Target, and other retailers across the country. But for the best deals, I recommend going to shopmando.com right now and using a promo code. Check it out. New customers get Mando's starter pack. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to 40% off your starter pack with code Mitchell, MITCHELL at shopmando.com. Once again, say it with me. Spell it with me. SHOPMANDO.com with promo code Mitchell. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. I love these guys. I should have brought some down from my bathroom. I got Mando all over my body and my house. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Wash your ass, you dirty.
This Latin connection, were these Colombians?
They were
initially
from South America.
Okay. Well, Colombia's in South America. Can we specify?
But they weren't Colombians.
Okay.
So
they were probably getting it from Colombians.
Yes.
You still didn't have the wholesale to connect. You had a better price.
I had a better price.
You weren't getting it from the source just yet.
Not yet.
But still, you're getting enough love to where your price is so low, you're just taking customers because you're now conducting a price war.
And what I talk about it in my book, the war, and I know everybody thinks, oh, war, they're fighting. No, we're family. We love each other. It was just competition.
Right.
It's like, I really describe it as two high school jocks. One plays basketball, one plays football, and they both jockeying for the same girl.
Right. White girl. Yeah. Yep. So now you're maybe, I think 20, 21 by this point. And I think one of the keys, because I'm always curious, I'm like, okay, what is the competitive advantage that you have in the coke game? I think for you is you were just so responsible for your age. Like, it was just very easy. It seems easy. Oh, you just go get a Colombian Connect and you have the best price. Now,
it's not that easy.
But everybody was always up, and you just conducted yourself like a CEO.
Well, it was business. It was business to me. This is how I took care of my family. And I wanted my guys to do the same. Take care of your family. It's like a tree with branches and leaves. When we go somewhere, I don't want to be the only one standing out. I want everybody to stand out.
Right.
So everybody was a boss in their own respect.
Right.
Because everybody that was a branch for me, they had, 5, 10 guys working for them.
Yep.
So it was really a corporation, like you say. It's really a corporation, but we just peddling illegal drugs.
How many guys did you have on the B team that you were giving product to?
Probably about eight guys that got it directly from me.
Yeah.
And then everybody else I made, go to those 8 guys.
And I think you had like a 10 kilo minimum. Like, if you weren't buying 10 bricks, you can't even talk to me.
You can't talk to me.
Right.
I wouldn't talk to you guys.
Right.
Try to talk to me all day. Hey, go talk to him. Go talk to him.
And at what stage did you stop even touching it? Like, if somebody made an order, you said, okay, you're going to get a phone call, and then you'd have a courier bring it.
Probably when I started getting 100 or better, because my guys were like, my main guys were buying like 25, 30 on their own.
Right.
So now, so I would be taken from them. And that's something that I think happened with me in the A team. That's why it didn't grow like that, because that's what they were supposed to have done. Step back and let your people eat too.
Right.
You can't eat everything. How do we grow?
Yeah.
I got to allow you to grow.
Right. So basically, if you're buying 100 kilos, you're only going to put a couple of points on what you give your guys.
That's it.
I see. Whereas the A team wanted to stretch it and hold it down, but it's more work and it's more risk.
Exactly.
And I think they ended up going to prison before you did.
Yes, they did.
Because of these kind of sloppy business practices. But let's work up to how you got 100 bricks and then 250 bricks and then 1,000 bricks.
Okay.
So you've got your first Latin connection. At this time, again, before crack becomes like the biggest thing to hit like the urban areas ever. How much were you moving a week? How many bricks? What were you making?
Well, when I finally clicked in with Edgar and Sal, they had a falling out. And they split their customers. And Edgar got me. And I'm buying at this time. I'm buying like 2 kilos myself. And one day he says, "Hey, it was around Christmas time," and he said, "Hey, man, I have a gift for you." Damn, I don't have a gift for you. So he comes to my house, and he has 2 boxes of Dom Perignon. It says Dom Perignon outside. One of them was a case of Dom Perignon. I'd never had Dom Perignon in my life. It's a case. The other case had 5 kilos in it. Turning point. Turning point.
What was the ticket on those keys?
I think at that time I might have been right around 26, 28, about 28.
Yeah.
And that's how I was able to start selling them for $1,000.
Right.
At that time. Because I'm saying to myself, boom, with a little bit of cut, I can stretch the 36 into 40.
Yeah.
And if I sold the 40 for $1,000 a piece, that's $40,000. Only paying 28.
Yeah. So 12 times 5. So yeah, so you just made off of 5 birds, it's 60 G's, and you're getting rid of that in a day to your people.
Probably about, not a day, probably about a week, a good week's work.
But that's a millionaire. That basically made you your first million, I assume.
And so, yeah, that helped me to really dive in and corner the market. You know, I remember a guy.
Because now you're, sorry to cut you off, but now just for people, just to get people's context, he started out selling ounces for $2,200. Now he's lowered the street price to $1,000
They were mad at me. They were mad. Wow. They were mad. We had a family meeting. We had to have a family meeting about it. Oh, what is he doing to the market? What is he doing? Stop it. Stop it.
No, man. I think the way
So I made a deal. This was my deal. I said, hey, man, here's the deal. You buy from me, I'll stop. Simple.
Yeah.
They declined because they had their own connection.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, they had their own. They had their own connection, and they were, you know, they were happy in their respect what they were doing. And okay, so let me go on back over here and keep doing what I'm doing then.
And you took more of the customers. You got the better price.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So,
but you know, CT Jr. He was gone. He was gone to prison. So it was just, you know, go. So now it's just he and I, you know, we have a little friendly price war. Yeah. But at the same time, we know, and if you know, you know, we're controlling probably 75% of the city. You know, and I was telling a guy the other day, a guy calls me up and he says, little small time guy. And he says, hey, JB, you know, I read the book. Okay. He says, I listened to the interviews. Okay. He said, I'm from the city. Okay. He said, you know, we all were bosses. You're right. He said, well, you know, I don't think you made it like everybody worked for you. And I says, no, I didn't make it seem like that. And he says, yeah, because, you know, we all were bosses. I said, hey, you know, okay, if you got drugs from 1980 to 1990, those drugs came from the A team, the B team, Chill, a guy by the name of Blackhead. Those 4 controlled the drug trade in San Francisco. Those 4 people, you know, you know,
the city's not that big.
City's not that big. But we had people coming from Oakland, Palo Alto, Richmond. You know, my cousin Goldie, he opened up a car wash in Berkeley, you know, and he's in the East Bay and he's cutting deep until Oakland's trade, you know, to the point where I had to have a talk with one of my dear friends, you know, to put them together so it didn't be a war.
Right.
You know.
But I do think at a certain point, I could be wrong, but I think you eventually become the top out of those 5 groups. I think you become the man. I don't think anybody was, I mean, were they all getting 1,000 kilos on
No.
consignment from Colombians?
No.
That's a big deal.
No.
Colombians don't just deal with you.
They don't deal with you at all.
So I think it's a good summation anyways, but let's move up to this.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, tell us about, so that's a lot of market. That's a lot of markets, a lot of people using Coke. Oakland was little Daryl, who was the son of Felix Mitchell.
No, he's
right? I'm sorry.
No, he's his auntie has a child by Felix. So Felix would be essentially an uncle, but not a blood uncle.
Right.
But uncle. And then he came up under, Felix, in the mob.
Can you tell us about who Felix Mitchell is really quick, please?
Felix Mitchell was a very flashy guy that sold a lot of heroin in Oakland. And a lot of people, including myself, tried to take a page out of his book and implement it to myself. Felix is probably one of the, he will go down as one of the largest drug dealers in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
That much respect, to him,
yeah. When he got killed, there's YouTube footage of his funeral going through Oakland, and it looks like a mafia funeral.
Yes.
There's like Bentleys going through it, and, this giant gaudy hearse, it's ridiculous. But yeah, he was really like a drug lord for a time.
Yes.
And why he was murdered in federal prison, I believe.
He was murdered in federal prison.
Can you, what is the lore behind that? What was behind that?
Well, some people say it was about a $10 debt. A $10 debt. At this time, he was in Leavenworth, Kansas. And at this time, you could have money in prison.
Whoa.
Well, it was only dimes and quarters, dimes. And so he supposedly loaned the guy a roll of dimes, and the guy didn't pay him when he was supposed to pay him. And he had some goons that was, sniffing up his butt and wanted to make a statement for him. Hey, Felix, the guy didn't pay you, man. He's down there gambling. So they go down there and shake the guy up. And the guy, in the guy's mind, he thinks Felix sent him. Felix didn't send him. And so he ends up coming into Felix's cell and stabbing him. And he dies.
And so it was his kind of godson, if you will, godnephew, little Daryl, who was your generation.
Little Daryl's my generation. Little Daryl is one of the reasons why Deep Rooted is even a topic right now, is because he was like, hey, man, I know the story. I'll write it. You better write, because he wrote a book.
Is he incarcerated?
No, he's out. He's out.
Okay, because I believe he was sentenced to life.
No, he had
Was
35. He had
Okay.
I had 30. He had 35.
And he was an even younger kingpin than you.
Oh yeah, he started out when he was about 17, man.
Because according to this book, he's 19 years old with 100 birds.
Yes.
When you're 19, you're a child. Like now. Like when I was 19, I was a kid. I was taking beer bongs and at toga parties in college. He's dealing with
hundreds of kilos,
huge narcotics.
Yes.
Good times.
Good times. That's a good times roll.
Right. So he was so anyways, that's the setting that we now have, Oakland and San Francisco. And basically, I assume it's just these 6 groups that are controlling all of the drugs in Northern California, the Central Valley, and up into Oregon.
Yeah.
Right?
And like people
Washington.
say, and I say, I went across the bridge, and partnered up with, actually, he came, got me. He partnered up with me. And I was like, man, all the people in Oakland, why you pick me? He says, you're different. You're really, really different, man.
You were.
He said, you're different. He says, I think, and I've been trying to meet him, and he'd been trying to meet me. And we met. We met in Caesars one day, and we talked, and we actually flew home together, not knowing we were on the same flight. We flew home together. We talked, and I told him, what do you know? what areas do you know in San Francisco? Man, I don't know many areas, man. I see, okay, you know what a Palladium is. Yeah, I know what a Palladium is. Meet me at the Palladium. He don't know what I'm bringing him. I just told him to meet me there, and I hand him a brick. I didn't bring no money. Because what do you want for that? I don't want nothing. That's yours. I just want your order. Give me your order. He says, okay. He took it back and he called me. He says, hey, man, good work. I like it. What's the ticket? 15. He says, okay, well, let me get 100 of those. And I said, nah. He says, you don't have them? I says, no, you already got one. I'm going to give you 99.
So you were able to give him kilos for 15,000 a piece?
Yeah.
So then what was your ticket?
At that time, I think I might have been paying 14. I didn't make a lot of money off him.
Well, whatever. It's 200 G's for passing it off.
It was a volume.
Yeah, of course.
It was a volume what I could do. And only reason why I made the $1,000 because he made me charge him that. He told me, hey man, I said, man, I'm gonna just give it to you what I paid for it because I know what we can do. He says, no, you got to make something. I said, don't worry about it. He said, how about 1,000? I'll pay you 1,000 over costs. I said, okay.
Yeah.
And that was part of the 1,000 that I'd gotten.
Yeah.
He was my first 100-kilo purchaser.
Wow. So you just wanted to
I wanted to be able to move them because
Yeah.
I'd never gotten 1,000.
Yeah. Right. And then when you're Colombian, see that you're moving it like that, I mean, you can do no wrong.
Exactly.
How many 100-kilo customers did you have by the end?
I had him. I had a guy out of he's out of Palo Alto, Rusty. Rusty would grab 100 from me also.
Yeah.
But my other guys were like 50s and 75s and stuff like that. And then like my main guy, Donnie Robinson, he had a lot of people. So Donnie had a free reign with me. He knew where they were kept. He could just basically go in and get what he wanted.
Right.
Hey, Doc, somebody want 25. Go get them.
So it essentially sounds like the B team was just a union of all bosses, but you were the one that was bringing the supply in,
I was just a guy that had the connection.
You facilitated the logistics of it. But
Exactly.
here, go grab what you need, and I'm going to take a little fee for the shipping and handling.
Exactly.
Wow. Fascinating.
That's why I say, I'll put my guys right now today in 2025 against anybody else's in the world. So let me in the country. A lot of people don't even have 5 guys that they even associate with that was part of their crew. There's no crew no more. Donnie was able to take, the B team and start Kings of Cali. Kings of Cali's been around for 25 years as a motorcycle club.
Yeah.
That was a spinoff.
Yeah.
That's a spinoff of the B team.
Yeah. Wow. And there was and I assume there's so much money coming in. Everybody's eating tough, to put it lightly. There's very little violence.
Very little. Very little.
I think you guys torched a guy's car from LA.
We torched a guy's Rolls Royce. He came from Los Angeles to the Bay Area. He was fighting a murder case, and his partner asked me would I allow him to work to make money to go back to fight the murder case. I said, sure, no problem. But here's the thing. I didn't have any problem with that. And I don't have any problem with anybody. I don't have any problem with Crips. I don't have any problems with Bloods. I don't have no problems with anybody. This is just an area that I was born and raised in, 3 generations deep, and I wasn't sharing it. I don't want to share it. Not with no outsiders anyway. So I let him come in and do his thing. And I said, don't bring anybody up here. Don't come up here and set up shop.
Mm-hmm.
Don't bring 4 or 5 of your homeboys up here. And he tried me.
Mm.
I had his car burnt up.
Yeah.
And told him, go back to Los Angeles.
Right.
And I told you, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, so people have gotten a misconception of me saying that.
Mm-hmm.
No. Bloods and Crips are more than welcome in the Bay Area. They were welcome under my time. Okay?
It sounds like it sounds like they were welcome, but they just had to buy from you.
No, they were welcome to visit. They wasn't welcome to set up shop. They wasn't welcome to come in there with 10 of their homeboys and take over a section of the city like they did in most cities
Right.
and states.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they were doing. We just didn't allow that to happen in the Bay Area.
No. Because you're right. They did that everywhere else in the country.
And I said, you know, some of my friends, I mean, like he was a friend of mine, you know, more than, again, that wasn't the case. The case, they were not allowed to come set up shop.
Mm-hmm.
They were allowed to come up there and visit their family and whatever they wanted to do, and just don't bring your crew.
So were you guys prepared to take it there though? Was there any one of your crew ever get murdered? Did you ever have to, I'm not asking you if you ever had to do it, but were you prepared? Because you guys ran around with Uzis and Tech 9s and all that crazy that everybody did back in the era. Were you guys prepared to, you know, get wet if you had to, get funky like that?
Oh yeah. Everybody knew. It's like we would go to clubs. Don't get into it with them dudes. Them 20 dudes, leave them dudes alone. You don't want the problem with them. And that's how we were.
It's very logical, very level-headed people.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't operate like that. You know, this is more. I think Oakland did more than we did. We didn't have it. We didn't have that problem. Oakland had, you know, some turf wars and stuff. San Francisco were more liberal, you know.
You're nicer people.
Again, is that you know, like my homeboy E40, like, you know, pop your collar. You know, that was more in San Francisco.
Yeah.
San Francisco had more players.
Right.
You know, and again, at the end of the day, we all got along.
Well, it's such a small city. I mean, it is dense, but it's very, very small. And the black community is very small. And you have to operate smarter. Whereas in Oakland, it was the ghetto back then.
Yeah, a little grimy,
It was grimy, and it kind of still is in certain places. So, you know, because it was known as the murder capital for a while.
Correct.
But whatever it was about San Francisco, probably the fog, you don't feel like killing anybody.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
We just didn't do that to each other. You know, I always felt like it was enough for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially with the numbers that I was given, that I made it relatively affordable.
Right.
For everybody. It was affordable. It was no need for that. You know, everybody respected everybody what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you had the Harpers, you had the Branners, you had the home team, you had the A team, you had the B team, you had the Bales.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and everybody pretty much, came together when we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a couple other independent guys in there, but everybody came together. If hey man, I need this, I need that. Okay, come get it.
Mm. Yep. Your price goes from $42,000 down to $12,000.
Yes.
Crazy. $12,000. That's $12 a gram.
Yes.
For 1 kilo. Okay.
Now your mind is working like mine worked.
Yeah, 100%. So, game recognized game, as we say in the Bay. So $12,000. Tell us, you eventually end up going down to Colombia.
Yes.
Now you are shaking hands with the source.
Yes.
This is pretty epic. Tell us about that, because I don't think you get into it in the book. Tell us about how you really meet the guys.
All due respect, because it's game recognized game.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up meeting. It was a drought. It was a drought, and there was no Coke. I mean, just literally no Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was my girlfriend, and she told me this guy that, her family knew was a friend of her brother-in-law's. He had coke. I said, he ain't got no coke. He has coke. So I go to his house. So I called him up, hey, Jerry, check it out, man. I'm going to come by and holler at you. Because it's not talking on the phone. Go by his house. I said, can you get me some coke? Yeah, I get you some coke. I said, how much can you get? How much you want? Just a kilo. Test him out. Go over his house. He calls. I go get the money. I come back. And man, I'm telling you, we open this thing up, man, and it's the most beautiful cocaine I ever seen in my life. This time it's called mother pearl fish scales. But the whole thing falls apart.
Oh, no boy.
Nobody wants shake. That's what we call a shake, duff. Nobody wants that. I can't take that. So now he takes it back. And he comes back with one hard. And I take it, and I literally buy a kilo every day for a week from this dude. And I told him, I said, hey, man, I want to buy more, but I just don't want you telling my business. I'm just really, about to stretch my wings, and I'm really trying to stay under 2 because this guy had a big mouth. And meant well, he just talked a lot. And so I said, man, I want 5 kilos. What? I buy 5. I buy 5 kilos from him for a week straight. Boom. I said, man, why don't you just give me the connection? He said, give me 10,000. Cough, no. And I ended up getting the connection for, I think, at this time it was these big screen TVs, the big floor model, big TVs with the wooden panels on them.
Yeah.
So they were probably like $2,600. So I buys him a TV and gives him like 2 ounces, I think. And he gives me the guy's number. And I mean, this dude is so old. Johnny, this dude is so old. And he's like this when in the middle of the deals. He's shaking. Wow. Like he got Parkinson's. Yeah. But, he'd come in and we'd do the business. And then once I got him from Jerry, he would come to my house, know.
And this is a Colombian?
This is a Colombian.
Okay. And what's he dropping off now?
Now he's dropping off 5s, my 5s. I'm still at my 5s. And then I kind of graduate to 7, 8. Then, we get to 10. And then he comes to me one day and he tells me, he says, hey man, I gotta leave. I said, what do you mean you gotta leave? The office, we call Colombia the office. The office is telling me I have to go to New York. Wow. I said, what? He says, so I'm going to be gone, man. I said, damn. Now at this time, a lot of guys from the Bay Area were going to Los Angeles and getting robbed or killed. And people were losing money. It was just crazy in Los Angeles at this time. And so he tells me to give him $54,000 for the connection. And I says, no. So my uncle tells me, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you don't pay him? You risk taking the money to L.A.? So he says, go back and negotiate with him. Negotiates with him, gets him to $36,000. He brings the guy to my house, introduces me to the guy. And I'm telling you, man, I went from $26,000 to $22,000 just overnight. It's like, wow. Mind you, they're like 32, 28 on the street.
Lights out.
Lights out.
And then he brings you 1,000 bricks.
No.
Sorry, I don't want to bury the lead.
We worked together for probably about 4 months. And he disappears. He disappears, dude. And I'm like, damn, no, I'm sorry. I went too fast. So one time he doesn't have any work. Now I'm up to like 20 things, 20, 25 things. And he's not around, right? He's not around. And I send the money to LA. But I had a guy in the Bay Area who tells me, I can give them to you. But he was a little higher, and he told me he didn't want to take my 1s and 5s. I'm not taking your 1s and 5s. You got to take it all. No. So I said, okay, f you there. So he calls me back, and he says, okay, I'll take them. Money's gone. I said, the money's gone. What do you mean it's gone? It's gone. It's gone. But it wasn't gone. It was sitting on my floor. I packed this money up, man, and sends it to Los Angeles the next day. And my cousin Ricky gets caught with the money at SFO. I'm sick. So my connection, he calls me up that same day. And he says, hey, man, I got the loot. He says, I got the work. And I says, I need to talk to you. Don't come to the house. Let's meet at the Kentucky Fried Chicken. I said, man, look, this is what happened. Waited on you. Nothing happened. Sent the money to Los Angeles. Got called up. Got to give me a day or so to pull up some more money, man. I said, I got some money, but it's going to take me a day to move around and navigate through it to get it. He says, don't worry about it. Take these. This is the first time he's ever given me anything. I was always buying them. Man, I take them, man, and I break those 25 things down, and I make them 35, right? And I sell them off, and they're complaining, man. They complain all over the place, right? Hey, just help me out. So we eventually get them off. I pay him off. We do it again. So essentially, probably I ended up doing that probably about 2-3 times and got my money back. And then he disappears on me. He disappears. And I don't hear nothing from him. And it's actually the day, this is how I remember it. I'm over in Oakland getting some rims put on my Corvette. And I'm walking, and he's calling me, and I'm trying to find a payphone.
He's paging you.
He's paging me like crazy. And I see a newspaper stand, and I see the newspaper, Oakland's drug kingpin slain in prison. I put the money in to get the newspaper. I go to the phone, and I'm trying to call. And it just ain't going through. So then I get another call, and it's area code 213. And they says, Lewis is calling you. Why you not answering the phone? I said, man, I've tried 10 times. It won't go through. I said, can I call and collect? They said, yeah. And they said, look, just slow down. Dial all the numbers that appear on your screen, on my pager. It was so many numbers. I'd never made a international phone call. Probably if you pull guys, if they were honest, I'm 62. You pull 62-year-old guys and ask how many of you guys ever made an international phone call? They probably say none. So here it comes, 011574. That's the area code.
Crazy. And then the number.
Then his code at the end of it, which was 66. So that's how I knew it was him trying to call me, right? And I answered. He says, and our word was, "Are you ready?" We didn't just, "Are you ready?" Yes. He says, "Are you ready?" Yeah, man. Where you been? Got hot. Had to get out of there. Don't worry about it. I got you. Okay. Boom. He says, somebody's going to call you tomorrow. This guy calls me up and he says, hey, man, he says, Lewis just sent you 1,000 kilos. He says, however, I'm going to give them to you 200 at a time. Is that okay? Yeah, because I don't want them. I don't want all 1,000. He said, I'm going to give you 200 at a time. I said, okay. That was the first time I've gotten 200 and I sold Little D the 100.
Did you feel like, wow, okay, now I'm on. I made it.
Oh, I made it. I knew I made it. I knew then. It was no stopping me.
No. When Colombians will just give you credit, you can't get any higher.
You can't get any higher. You cannot get any higher at all.
What year was that?
This was in about 86.
Okay.
About 86.
And it's 22,000.
Oh, yeah. No, that's when I went down to
for the 12,000.
That's when I went to 12,000.
Holy.
They want to know who's moving all this work.
Right.
Who's moving all this work?
The bosses in Colombia want to know.
They want to know who's moving all this work.
Wow.
So he says, hey, man, can you get a passport and come over here? I said, yes. Man, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing, man? Am I even coming back? Am I even coming back? Fly to Miami, fly over, he picks me up. Boom, boom, we party, hang out.
Where'd you fly to?
We flew into Bogota.
You fly to Bogota.
Flying to Bogota.
Okay. Do you know which cartel family you're going to meet?
I don't know anything.
Okay.
I just know, I know that his source of supplier was Pablo. I never met Pablo.
Okay. So you were going to you were dealing with the Medellín Cartel.
Right. And at the time, it was a guy, Carlos Layer. His name was ringing a lot at that time. That's all I knew.
Right.
Pablo was big, but his name wasn't ringing like it eventually did.
Right.
So I go in, we sit down, we talk, you bring some guys in, and I stayed like 2-3 days and party, just partying. They just, let me see this face.
Yeah, hang on. First of all, partying. How did you party?
Clubs.
Okay. You never use cocaine though?
No, I drink.
Yeah.
I didn't smoke weed. I just drink.
Okay. So you're in Bogota partying. Who's the connect there? Who do they introduce you to?
Well, we're going to leave him. We're going to leave him anonymous.
In the dustbin of history.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever meet Pablo?
No, I never met Pablo.
Okay.
He just told me that was his.
He was an emissary.
Yeah, that was his
Pablo.
source. Exactly.
Okay.
And it probably not even him, the guy that he ended up introducing me to. The guy that he introduced me to, and then him. That's who he was getting it from.
And so you're basically there on like a business networking.
Well, they want to see who's this guy.
Right.
Who's this young guy in the States that's moving all this coke?
Fascinating.
So it's like, and I had to come by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't bring one of my guys or anything with me. You know what I'm saying? So, it was scary because I'm like, I don't know where the hell I'm going.
Right.
And again, I don't know if I'm coming back.
And back then, anybody could get killed in Colombia.
Anybody could get killed. But I knew that my business was always straight, and he was straight with me. So it was like, yeah, you got to get over here.
That goes to show you just how much they had the finger on the pulse of everywhere their material went in any part of the world.
They knew exactly where it was going.
Yeah.
And, I remember one time, I wish I would have took that opportunity. It was a time that, because they would go from Colombia into Miami, drop it in Miami. And then we had people that would drive it from Miami to Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And then sometime I would pick it up in Los Angeles, or they would bring it all the way. And we end up buying 2 vans. We ended up buying 2 vans that had a compartment underneath it that held 250 kilos in it. Mm. And so the money's in one van, the kilos in another. We be parked. We just switch keys and go.
So the route was Colombia to the route was Colombia to Miami to Los Angeles up to the Bay.
Yes.
That's the 4-way stop to get to you.
Right. Now they offered me a deal. If I go to North Carolina, I could save $4,000 a kilo. Wow. But I don't know nobody in North Carolina.
$4 million you'd save yourself.
But I have to drive from North Carolina back to the Bay. Had I known what I know now, I could have went into Atlanta. I could have stayed here in North Carolina. But I might have got a life sentence too. Because I met a lot of guys in the system that was moving way less than that, ended up with life sentences.
Why?
I don't know. I think the laws was a little stiffer there.
But the federal laws are the same everywhere. It's federal.
They were stiffer. Guys, like I saw more guys in D.C., Florida, Atlanta, get more life sentences than anywhere else.
So they had the harsher prosecutors, the harsher U.S. attorneys.
Yes. Now, they say the Northern District, which is the Ninth Circuit Courts of Appeal, was the most lenient. Right. And when the sentencing guidelines came into effect in 1987, from November 1st, 1987 to November 1st, 1988, the Ninth Circuit did not use those sentencing guidelines. Mm. They were continuing to sentence people under the old law.
Right. Which was what?
Which was old law was pretty much, I think you got, I know you got more good time because under what I'm sentenced under is a Sentencing Reform Act that you only got 54 days a year. Right. Is all you got. And I think they were, I don't know how, they were getting it much more. Like, for example, on my 30-year sentence, I did 27 years. A guy under the old law did 17.
Right.
So I actually did 10 years more under the new law.
Yeah.
So so again, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit, all the judges did not, which is basically California, did not use that sentencing guidelines until the Supreme Court came back and said, you know what? The sentencing guidelines are constitutional. Start using it.
Yeah.
And it was something that was continued to be fought for many, many years.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. So obviously California is the most politically liberal place.
Yes.
So it follows that most of the judges would sentence drug dealers and drug kingpins leniently or more leniently.
More lenient.
But you came in after the mandatory minimums were already there.
But my case itself, I think that if I had got my case in Sacramento, had I got my case in Los Angeles, I'd have got a life sentence.
Interesting. Okay, we're gonna get there because this is also a fascinating part of the story. So now you're moving 1,000 kilos for the Medellín Cartel,
right?
I mean, every week. How long does it take you to move 1,000?
No, probably about a good month. A good month.
Okay,
a month.
Okay,
6 weeks.
So you bring in, but off 1,000 kilos, how much do you net off that? What do you profit off it?
I'm anywhere depends on the guy, the person, but it's anywhere between a maximum $4,500 on each, anywhere from $2,000, $2,500, $4,500, depending on the person.
Yeah, $4 million.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so now you've got with white collar dudes cleaning up your money. I mean, you're at like the top of San Francisco elite financial institutions, washing your money.
Yes, I'm actually, downtown, and which the Bay Area. So our downtown is considered a financial district, and I'm a guy that's going in there with kilos. So I mean, those big execs like to have their parties and do things. They're buying kilos and they washing money.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were giving work to those guys too?
Giving work to those guys.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so. And also, I should point out what's so fascinating about the Bay Area hustlers from your era is even when you were a multi-kilo dealer, you guys all had front businesses.
Yeah. Right?
Well, like yours, I think you owned.
I had a delicatessen.
Yeah.
Here's the beef. I had a liquor store, Kirkwood Liquors. I had a roofing company and drywall, JB Roofing and Drywall. And I owned a 7-Eleven, which wasn't it was a prototype of 7-Eleven. We called it mom and pop, mini market, because 7-Eleven actually wanted 22% of our gross receipts to use their logo.
Right.
Everything had to be bought from them. So it's like, man, why would we give up 22% of our gross receipts? And we could do the same thing without 7-Eleven. So that's what we did.
Right. Right.
And then I was poured into a body shop.
Were those businesses strictly to wash cash, or were they profitable on their own?
No, I didn't make any. I didn't make money.
You're just moving the money through it.
I'm just moving money through it. I mean, when I opened them up, it was in hopes to make money, but they didn't make any money.
Right. And you didn't care, really?
No, I didn't care. I mean, one of my things was because I was helping kids in the community, you know, by giving them jobs.
Of course.
And, you know, a safe haven to go to, like my delicatessen had a bunch of arcade games in there. And they'd come in there and play the arcade games, bunch of penny candy, junk, hot dogs, and, you know, hamburgers and that kind of stuff, you know.
Were you known in the community in Hunters Point and Bayview and these, you know, South San Francisco, the black neighborhoods? Did your name, was that associated with drug kingpin the way in Oakland Little Darryls were?
Yes.
Okay, so the kids knew about James Beasley, JB?
Yes.
Okay. But that makes sense. You're making $4.5 million a month and a half. You don't care if your mini mart is in the black.
Yeah, I don't care.
Who gives a right?
Yeah.
So now the way that you're insulating yourself, now that you've got 1,000 kilos, you've got real responsibilities now. You're
a big debt.
Yeah, you had a big debt too. Right. Did you ever f the money up, by the way, for him?
The money up?
Yeah, did you ever f the money up?
I probably wouldn't be here.
Right. Okay. That's a good point. Did you ever get hit? Did the spot ever get raided? It never did. You cops never took any work off you guys.
Let me tell you something.
That's fascinating.
I met a lot of people, and I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of people, and they all say this, okay? But I didn't get caught with nothing. Not only did I not get caught with nothing, Johnny, no one in my crew ever got caught with nothing. My case has not even that much cocaine in it. No cocaine. There's no cocaine confiscation in my case. Not 1 gram.
So does that mean even their people never told on them, your guys?
My guys never told on me.
But I mean, it sounds like even their people didn't tell on them, because if you didn't.
My case arose out of a tax evasion case. I'm the youngest person in the history of the United States to ever be charged with a tax evasion. I was 25 years old. When you think about tax evasion, do you honestly think about a black kid from the ghetto? No, you don't.
Think about Al Capone.
There you go. You think about somebody in New York, the Colombo family, or the Gottis, or somebody, some old white man, 70-something years old. You don't think about a 25-year-old black kid from the ghetto. You just don't, because I'm barely old enough to even file taxes. You can't file taxes until you're 18. Most people at 18 don't go get jobs. You probably don't get a job until you're probably 21 in life. So you're coming to me charging me for tax evasion at 25 years old.
Right. But the feds were on you. Like they were trying, they were working in conjunction with the Bay Area task force.
Yeah, but they couldn't get nothing.
No.
They got nothing.
What was the key though? Like, how is that possible? I mean, I know it was a different time. It was the 80s. There wasn't as much technology, but how is it possible that they never got any work? 1,000 bricks a month through your crew goes out to hundreds of people when you break it down from the kilo buyers from the B team all the way down to their buyers, all the way down the chain. I mean, it's insane. That's, I believe, 100,000 grams going out. How do they not get any work?
Well,
1,000 times 1,000. How many grams is that? That's 1 million. That's 1 million grams going out.
Very carefully, right? And we controlled who we gave it to.
Mm-hmm.
We controlled the market. Yeah. You just, again, remember I told you couldn't just buy. You couldn't just buy from me. I only gave it to those people. Yeah. They only gave it to their people. Yeah. And after that, probably who knows and who cares after that point.
Right.
But, for the most part, the core was solid.
Yeah.
And again, it's just not by chance that book is deep rooted.
Yeah. And the fact you had the best price and the best quality meant that you could be selective about who you gave it to,
of
because
course.
People had to come to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they didn't find
nothing. There's no confiscation of nothing.
Nothing. Okay. So
nothing.
But still, a 30 shot. They were trying to get you on tax evasion, and it was a couple of people in the financial institution, I believe, that were cooperating with the IRS, with the criminal division of the IRS.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on this? Because it's fascinating. Most drug cases are not made this way.
Exactly. So I had an accountant by the name of Robert Doyle. And Robert was a very smart guy, man. And he, you know, he was laundering money for one, as I described in my book, one too many drug dealers. You know, he had an amazing, profitable accounting firm, you know, Doyle Williams and Company in Oakland. They had some of the top athletes that they were their accountings for. And he slid one too many drug dealers in there. And he was laundering the money, you know. And he would like say, "You a square guy." And yeah, you're a square guy and you wanna you're losing your house. You can't get a loan. You go to your accountant. Man, I'm losing my house, man. My credit is bad. I can't get no. He'd get you a loan. Guess where your loan would come from?
JB's drug money.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. JB's drug money would save your house.
So through a real estate company, like a holding company, I assume that he would set up. Okay. But the source of the money
was me.
Right. But to show legitimate income, it has to come from somewhere. You have to show the first point of entry into the financial system.
I call it seed money.
Yes, seed money. So, and what was that strategy?
Well, what I would do is I'd give him the cash.
Right.
And he'd take care of it. That wasn't my problem.
Okay, so you didn't know how the seed money was going into the system.
I'd give him the cash and he'd do the work. And all I know, it would come back. It would come back in a check.
Yeah.
It would come back in a check. And that check was deposited in escrow. And you got that check out of escrow. And I was on your property.
Right.
On my company.
So you were the first lien on this property. Second lien. Okay. Second lien. So, and then he managed that money, the legitimate money as well, you know, after it came through all cleaned up. How did the IRS, and so he got jammed up?
His wife.
Okay, right.
His wife started having an affair, and I talk about it in the book. His wife started having an affair with a DEA agent, Mendoza, Robert Mendoza. Teresita Doyle started having an affair with him, and she spills the beans.
Holy, are you kidding me?
No.
That's how the whole thing unraveled? Was that on purpose? Do you think that DEA agent started sleeping with this broad to get to you?
What happened is that they were following a guy. They were following a guy. Oakland had a special unit. I think it was SSU, some type of unit that would follow state parolees, and they were following this guy, Bobby Danks. And Teresita was a real estate agent, and they were riding around in this big 560 Mercedes-Benz, and they're looking at these properties. So when she drops Dank off, the parole unit, she drops Dank off, he goes in, hands her a shoebox. She goes on about her business. Dank gets back in his car, and they stop Dank, go back in the house and find $200,000. And they find all his paperwork. See, I never had my paperwork for my loans and stuff. I let him keep it. I didn't need it. I knew what I gave him. I knew what I was getting back. So Bobby was a person that, you know, paranoid. He wanted his own paperwork. So they went there and they confiscated $275 from him and his paperwork where he had made loans.
Right. I see.
So they go to the accountant's office with a search warrant for more Bobby records. In the process of that, they stumble across James Beasley.
Wow.
A couple other drug dealers. They go back to federal court to get a warrant to seize my stuff. Right. And they seized my stuff.
And that was how you first got on their radar.
That's how I first got on well, I think I was on their radar already.
Right.
But that was
like their lucky break.
That was their lucky break. Like, wow, this dude is just not running around here buying cars. This dude is really trying to take this money and go legit with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that they don't want.
No.
They do it, but they don't want a black man to do it.
Yeah. And now what year is that they first hit on you?
I think 87.
Okay, 87. So by now you're a millionaire many times over. Did you have an exit strategy in mind?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I had an exit. My thing was, when they came to arrest me, I wasn't even doing anything anymore. I hadn't seen a brick of cocaine in probably 8 months. I wasn't even seeing it. You know all I was doing? I would pull up with my duffel bag and load it up with my profits, and I'd ride out the sunset.
You never saw work. You just collected cash.
All I did is made the phone call.
Yeah.
I made the phone call for it to be delivered.
Yeah.
Once it got in, they'd inventory it, and I would tell them what to do with it, and that was it. And when it was all said and done, the bill was paid, this money was there, I'd go pick my money up and I'd be gone.
And were the logistics, getting the work from Los Angeles after it had made it across the country up to the Bay, was that all handled by the Colombians or by your team?
No, by them.
Wow. So they got it all the way to the stash house. And then
the stash house in Ontario, California.
Okay. And then how? And
Rancho. I'm sorry, Rancho Cucamonga.
And then they would bring it up to the Bay. And where was it warehoused when it got to San Francisco?
I had apartments all over the Bay Area.
Okay. And then when your guys beeped and they said they're ready, they knew where to go pick them up.
Yeah. For example, we had got to a point where most of them were when I got them, they were parked in Rancho. Then we would bring them up as we needed them.
Oh, interesting. So you never really kept bulk work in the Bay?
No.
Wow.
I didn't have to. I'd go down there and get it. Well, remember you had the van that carried 250.
Yeah.
So we never had no more than 250 up there at a time.
Right.
Because that's all the van would hold.
Sure. And then this guy gets 20, he gets 50, this guy gets 10.
Right.
And then at the end of the month, you're just picking up a duffel bag. Heavy duffel bag.
Yes. Or if I needed some money or something, I'd run in. I might need something. I'd go in and grab 50,000 or I could 100,000. I mean, I'd just take it off of what I got coming.
Yeah, that's nothing.
No.
And you owned a ton of cars.
Yeah.
You know, and these are the cars that the rap that I grew up listening to, and not even listening to, like, you can't even call it admiring. Like, I lived through Too Short and E40 and Mac Dre and now guys like Larry June, and everything they rap about, from Corvettes to the style, it all comes from guys like you.
Larry June fan?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
But I'm saying it all comes, everything that they rap about comes from guys like you, from your generation.
Exactly. So Larry June and Burner has a song. And it talks about, I got a GNX Grand National like James Beasley. You heard that song?
I mean, he always talks about his Grand Nash, so maybe. But
pull it up.
Okay.
Pull it up.
I will.
Okay.
Will do.
So E40 has a song. It's made like the one Rick Ross made of BMF. He says, I keep my mouth shut like James Beasley.
Now I have heard that song. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's wild. Yeah. See, it comes from the culture that the drug dealers created, and then the rappers went and glorified, right?
Exactly. Which they pay no homage for. You know, it's like, too bad I can't sue you for infringement.
I know.
Too bad I can't sue you for using my name.
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
I know. Well,
you know, it's like they get to actually talk, rap, walk, dress like we did.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't have to live the consequences.
Exactly.
Well, you paved the way. You should feel good about that.
Yeah, I wish I could just get a little siping every now and then from them.
Well, we're going to get into it because you're doing well now, but I want to talk about, okay, so it's now 1989.
Okay.
And you are in rarefied drug dealer air. You're not touching any work. You're just picking up cash and then a clean check. So it sounds like the IRS was investigating you through your accountant's whore of a wife, Mrs. Doyle, for now like 2 years, 2.5 years. What other evidence are they gathering?
Well, so they're like, okay, so I have a guy who I have one guy. He wasn't indicted with me. One of my brothers Ernie Stansberry. Ernie was one of Donnie's workers, and Donnie brought him into the fold and said, "Hey, man, I'm going to use him as one of my carriers."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Okay, go ahead." I approved him. Go ahead. And he took some cocaine to a guy who was an informant. And I think it was 2 kilos. And he went to prison. He got 5 years. So he's in federal prison. So they know that this guy is a part of the B team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not directly to me, but they know that he's a part of it.
Yeah.
So when I say there was no confiscation, that was it, but that wasn't in my case. That was in his own case.
Right.
You know, so that was another part of the investigation.
Okay. So, but what about the money laundering or the tax evasion side?
The tax evasion came from, they called it unexplained wealth.
Mm-hmm.
When you say, for example, that 1985, I think I claimed I made $46,000 on a tax return.
Mm-hmm.
And the government goes out and do a net worth on you. They go and get your credit card bills. They go and look at your PG&E. They run your credit and see everything that you have credit. So cars, they go to the car dealership and say, "Oh, you know, how much money did he put down in this car?" They're going to tell them.
Yeah.
So they get the paperwork on that, and then they do a net worth. And they say, "Well, damn, Beasley said he made $46,000 in 1985, but we show that he spent $300,000.
Yeah.
So where did that money come from?"
Yeah. Right.
So they said the only legitimate source they could see it coming from cocaine.
Okay, but how are they able to prove that in court, though, if they don't have any work?
Where did I get the money from?
Right, but you could say,
so they're saying
maybe I was selling marijuana. Like, how do they, you know?
I wasn't known for a marijuana dealer. I'm known for a cocaine dealer.
Okay,
that's what they say. That's what they say.
I understand that, but where is the evidence coming from?
I manufactured. That's it's called ghost dope. Ghost dope.
Did the guy that snitched on one of Donnie's workers and with the 2 kilos, did he say it was James? It's all coming from James?
No, they put him on the stand. They put him on the stand. He said that he didn't know me. He said he didn't know me. He saw me one time sitting in a Mercedes, but he didn't know me. He didn't know if the drugs came from me or not. He didn't know.
Okay. So after the 89 earthquake, it's the end of 89. This is when you get arrested. Feds, DEA, IRS, all that?
All that.
How did they arrest you? How'd they hit you?
Well, I was supposed to get arrested the day of the earthquake. But the earthquake happened. I didn't get arrested, which was I think it was 17th, October 17th, 89 was the earthquake. And I got arrested the 26th. And I was at my liquor store. Sitting in the back of my partner's limousine discussing how many cars I needed. I was going to get married. And how many cars that I needed. He says, "Hey, man, look, police everywhere." I looked around. I said, and I slid down in the seat of the car. "Start this thing up." He starts it up. So I go to this hotel called the Cathedral, and I called my attorney, and I told him. And he says, "Man, I think you got indicted." So he calls over there, comes back. He said, "Yeah, you got indicted." He says, they know that you have a warrant. If you don't turn yourself in, they're going to start kicking in doors. So I got some cash laying around. You know, I don't want them to kick in doors.
Yeah.
Well, I got cash yet. So I said, okay. So I'm like, So my grandmother's telling me, turn yourself in. I said, no, I'm not going to turn myself in, because I wasn't. And she convinced me to turn myself in October 26, 1989. I didn't see the streets again until May 4th, 2015.
Wow. So 25 years.
27.
27 years, sorry.
Don't short me.
Yeah, right. So you weren't able to bond out?
They wouldn't give me a bond. There was no bond.
Oof.
It was no bond based on some violence that happened. And another guy that was laundering money for me, and he was laundering money for me and getting properties for me.
Mm-hmm.
He had turned government informant.
Okay.
And he was ultimately murdered in this office. They attributed it to me.
Wow.
So when I went for bail, they tried to attribute it to me.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they didn't pin it on me.
But they use it.
They use it to detain me.
The U.S. attorney tells the judge, "Look at his organization is tied to this guy who got murdered. Don't let him out."
Exactly.
And that's enough.
Exactly.
Because you had the money to bail out.
Yes. So the guy, two guys had ran off to Texas. They extradited him back to Texas, and then ultimately the guy that they ultimately charged went on the run, and they eventually caught him. He had plastic surgery done, and they still caught him.
Oh, these are the guys who did the murder.
Yeah.
Okay. Were those Colombians?
No, they were black.
Did you know them?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And so they're down now.
No, one is dead. I think one is out, and I don't know where the other one is.
Wow. And what was the beef with this guy, this accountant doing the?
No, this was a real estate broker.
Oh, what did he run off with some money? Screw people over?
No, he was getting a lot of homes for drug dealers.
Okay. Why did he get murdered?
Because he was telling.
Right. Okay. And a part of that was telling on you, I assume.
He told on many people.
Okay. So now they weren't able to put the king. This is really interesting. They were not able to stick the CCE on you.
Right.
So
a lot of people don't know what a CCE is.
Continual criminal enterprise.
Correct.
This is the Kingpin Act is
That's
what
right.
it's known as.
That's right.
And obviously that's self-explanatory. But the U.S. attorney went to Washington, I believe. This is how high up your case went.
To get approval. You can't file a CCE, continual criminal enterprise, on someone just because you want to. You have to go to Washington to get approval. So you get the approval of Washington, and they got you have to prove $10 million gross receipts, $10 million in a 12-month period of time. That's one of the elements.
Right. From
of a
drug
CCE,
sales.
From drug sales.
Yeah.
So if you can prove that, then you can get the CCE.
But they didn't have anything. They had no dope on you whatsoever.
Dope on me.
So, but the charge was?
The charge was tax evasion, money laundering, possession with intent to distribute, and conspiracy.
How could they give you possession with intent to distribute? Based on what?
Based on one guy tells them, me and his brother did some things. His brother bought 50 kilos from me. He picked them up. His brother bought 75 from me. He was supposed to pick them up, but he got arrested. So that's 125 kilos. So then the 2 kilos Ernie got caught with. Okay. Then they found a drug ledger inside of Madam C's purse in Rancho Cucamonga, which detailed 580 kilos.
Right.
So they added them all. It was 367. So they added them all together.
The total was about 580.
Correct. The total was 580, and that's what they sentenced me for.
Right. But not
one.
No. Of course not anything on you. But really just the testimony of a couple of people who could have been lying. Right. They weren't, but they could have been.
They were. Well,
Really?
I mean, the guy was a dope fiend. And they knew he was a dope fiend. But that was the only smoking gun they had.
Right.
So they used it.
Okay, so that makes a little more sense. So they're able to put 580 kilos combined with all the tax evasion. That's how they're able to put a possession with intent to distribute and a conspiracy charge.
Yes.
But not a kingpin charge because
Correct.
They don't know how much money you're making off of it.
They don't know. And then, what they ultimately did, what they built in with the new law is they built in a thing called a 4-level enhancement for a managerial role. So if you exercise a managerial role over 4 or 5 individuals, you can get a 2-level, you can get a 2 or 4-level enhancement. I got a 4-level enhancement. So that made my sentence go, I was basically looking at 14 to 17 years. Okay. Then the 4 levels kicked in. I went from 27 to 33.
Right.
The judge went in the middle and gave me 30.
Okay. So you decided you're locked up in where? Do they have a federal holding cell, holding jail?
I was in Dublin. I was in Dublin, California.
No, I'm talking about when you're fighting the case.
Yeah, Dublin.
Okay, you're in Dublin.
I'm in Dublin. I'm in San Francisco County Jail, and I'm in San Jose County Jail.
Okay, so why did you decide to fight the case? Your attorney must have thought, they don't have a lot of evidence.
Because they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of evidence.
Okay, did you know what you were...
No, I did not know what I was facing. I did not know.
Did they offer you a plea?
They never offered me a deal.
Yeah, they wanted you, James Beasley.
So now, when I asked for a deal, Hey, give me a deal. So, okay, what are you offering? I'm not offering anything. I want 15 years. My prosecutor, George L. Bevan Jr., said, tell Beasley that's the most preposterous thing I've ever heard. Him getting 15 years. It ain't gonna happen. Tell him to start with 20. No, I'm not starting with 20. No way.
I know hindsight's 50-50.
He says, start with it. Not that he was going to give it to me. Start with it. But what I know today that I didn't know yesterday, all I could have gotten was 20 years. I shouldn't have got no more than 20 years because they go hand in hand. 841 is a possession. You have to possess it to be able to do the conspiracy, which is the 846. 21 U.S.C. 846 is a conspiracy. 848 is a CCE. So you have 21 U.S.C. A1A, B1B, B1B, and B1C. B1C is a catch-all provision, 0 to 20 years, when there's no dope in the case. So, lawyers don't know because they never study these sentencing guidelines.
Right, and this was brand new.
Yeah,
so they had nothing to look at, case studies.
They didn't do their work. I should have been sentenced under 841 B1B.
So did your lawyer...
I'm sorry, B1C, 0 to 20. B1B was 5 to 40. B1A is 10 to life. They take and slam everybody under B1A because it's 10 to life. 5 kilos or more, you go to B1A.
Yeah.
If you got caught with 4, you go to B1B. If you get caught with nothing, you go to C, which is 0 to 20, and that's where I should have been.
Wow. So do you feel, because obviously you had the best criminal attorneys money could buy.
I had a guy by the name of Tony Serra. Tony Serra was a big Hell's Angel lawyer.
Okay.
Represented all the Hell's Angels. Beating everything. You know, at the time, he was probably the number 3 drug lawyer in the country.
Yeah. Expensive?
Very.
How much were you giving him?
I paid him $1 million.
Right. So then, do you feel like he f***ed you?
No, he just didn't do his work. He didn't do his work. He didn't do his homework. what I just relayed to you got relayed to me by a guy in prison.
Wow.
You got guys, again, remember I said this was college. This wasn't jail. This was college. Pay attention. If you go to jail, pay attention. You can become anything that you want to become because their guy is in there that's going to teach you.
Yeah.
So I was already buying real estate. I just got sharper when I went in there. So this guy had a life sentence out of Pasadena, and he told me, he said, hey, man, you got. And he showed me in the books, and I continue to fight, to try to get out, and boom, here comes New Jersey versus Apprende. Says all you can get is 20 years. However, it wasn't retroactive, so I couldn't get it.
Oh no! At what point in your stretch did you meet that guy? Did you realize that?
Probably in 2001, 2002.
So you're about 11, 12 years in. Okay. Wow.
I filed it. The court says, yep, you're right. You're right. However, it's not retroactive. So I sit.
Did you write him back and say, come on, man? Come on. It's me, baby. No violence. No nothing.
Nothing.
No, tell us about the trial real quick. You decided to go to trial. You went to the box, as we say.
I had no choice. I had no deal.
Yeah, you had no deal. So
now we're in trial. So here's the thing with the government. The tell is you can convict, you can indict and convict a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's just that easy to do. Okay? Throw some up against the wall, just that little bit of it has to stick. And you're convicted.
Right.
So what we did is we put up roadblocks. Stop this from coming in. She can't testify. If she testifies, this don't come in. If she don't testify, this doesn't come in. He don't testify, this don't come in. I had 8 people. Unheard of. Eight people refused to testify under grant of immunity. They try to get these people to testify. You can testify and tell everything you want to tell, even incriminate yourself, and nothing's going to happen. And they refused, and they went to jail.
Wow.
It's unheard of.
What did the rest of the B team? I should have asked you this. When they arrested you, did they take down the other members of the B team? They didn't.
I went by myself.
Wow.
I went by myself. A couple weeks later, they brought in my cousin, Madam C. They brought her in. A year later, they bring in Donnie and Aaron.
Okay. And what were their fates?
Donnie, of course, they had to deal with him and Ernie. Oh, and they brought Ernie back. They brought Ernie back and re-indicted him again with us.
Oh, no.
So he was doing 5, got another 5. So I think Donnie had a possession with some guy. Aaron has possession with a guy, and they let him plead to theirs. After I got convicted, which I had nothing, I said, hey, man, you guys better take these deals. So they took their deals. One got 5, one got 7.
Okay. So, and what are the other guys you were associated with giving work to?
They kind of got away.
Wow.
Yeah, they vanished.
Wow.
They vanished and got away.
Oh my God. That is unheard of. That's true leadership, man.
Some of them they didn't go out with us. They didn't party with us. So they just kind of stayed in the shadow.
Yeah.
They didn't hang with us. So if you didn't hang with us, you really didn't know that I was their supplier.
Right.
Because like even some of the people I named in the book, and people say, why did you do that? Why did you name it? If it's my testimony. If I had changed your name, Johnny, they would say, who's Johnny Mitchell? Who is that? He didn't grow up with us. He didn't hang down there with us.
Yeah.
So it was too much explaining.
Yeah.
Tell the story the way it is. If you were in that era, you would appreciate it.
Yeah.
You appreciate the book.
Yeah.
And you could tell the tales and stories yourself, and you could say, I remember that. Opposed to calling me or going on social media saying, I don't remember that. Who is that guy? He didn't live next door to us. too many unanswered questions. And I can just go with the truth because nothing in the book is going to get anybody in trouble today.
No.
And a lot of the names are not government names. They're street names.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, if you know, you know.
I mean, this is just a real leader you are, James, because you took now, did you have an opportunity, not that you would ever tell? And it's funny that a great anecdote in the book is when you're going to trial for a state case. I think you like beat somebody up with a bat and you called and they kept lowering their plea deals. They're like,
and my grandmother kept saying no.
And even your grandmother was like, you will never confess to anything.
That's right.
So you'll never confess to anything, much less tell. But did you have an opportunity? Could you have given up guys on the B team?
They never asked me to.
What about your Colombian connects?
They never asked me.
This is crazy.
They never asked me.
And now why is that? They wanted you so bad, or they were like, maybe he doesn't have it like that.
I don't know. They never asked. The proffer was never offered. Wow. They never went to my attorney and said, hey, tell James this.
So there was no negotiating. There was
but probably one of the things is because Tony Serra is his big anti-snitch lawyer. So they knew, don't go to him with it.
Yeah.
Because
it's a non-starter.
He wasn't going to do it.
Right. So it was kind of just a lost cause anyway.
Yeah. And so, when I hired those attorneys for those guys, they had to commit to me because I paid the bill.
Yeah. I
paid your bill. So you might represent him, but remember, I'm cutting your check. So your first obligation is him, but you also have one to me. So this is what I asked. If he decides to cooperate, all I want you to do, because you can't tell me, ethically, you cannot tell me. So what I want you to do is resign off the case.
That's how you'll know.
That's how I know.
And everybody stayed solid.
Everybody stayed solid. And I was able to take that and pass that down to other people that had large groups. Yeah. This is what you do. Lawyer resigns off the case. You know the guy's hot. He's warm. Get away from him.
So you're filing motions and your people are refusing to testify. And, it's really got all the echoes of like a mafia case. You go to trial though in 1990. How long does the trial last? And what do they present? What is the
about
government?
6 weeks. I think we went for about 6 weeks.
And what does the government present? I mean,
the government presents I ended up pleading guilty to the tax evasion because I didn't want to put my mom, my two grandmothers on the stand to testify about the unexplained wealth.
Yeah.
So I said, well, you know what? If I plead guilty, that doesn't come in. So that was the whole idea. Me plead guilty and none of the money comes in. We're just going to go to trial on a dry drug case.
I see.
We got to be able to win this case because there's no dope.
So you didn't have to forfeit a bunch of money or property.
No, I mean, they took property from me. I had some stuff over in Hawaii that they snatched from me and a couple other stuff and the money that I lost out at the airport.
Yeah.
Took a couple of cars, just, but I mean, it
doesn't sound like a huge haul because you pled guilty on it.
Right.
Okay. So who did they have testifying on the drug side?
The drug side was the guy Sylvester. Who else was it? Ulysses Johnson, Rick Sanchez, Bill Brooks, a guy, Bobby Evans. Who else?
And are these drug dealers or
some of these I don't even
accountant?
know.
Okay.
Some of them I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know him. It was just like James is a hot ticket. Let me tell.
Yeah.
Let me tell, and get in the witness protection program.
Right.
Or whatever, and I mean, so they were shaking trees and trying to get anybody and everybody to tell on me. They handed me a witness list the day of the trial. The prosecutor went to the judge and says, hey, people are getting killed all around this case. And hey, we don't want to expose our witnesses. We're going to wait to the day of the trial. The day of the trial, he walks up to my lawyer and throws a list on the table with 180 names on there. You got to figure out who's the five that's telling.
Right.
Because he didn't want to still tell us.
Wow. I can't believe that's legal. Wow. Did you feel like you had action?
I did, because they had no dope. Yeah. I mean, it's like, where's the evidence at? I'm under like, where is the evidence at? I have to see the evidence. And a lot of the feds is hearsay.
Yeah.
A lot of it is hearsay,
much of it.
Yes.
Probably most of it.
And they go for it.
Yeah. Man. Well, what did you think when you got sentenced? Were you like, okay,
I'm never getting out of jail. I never saw myself doing the 30 years. But at some point, when in the first beginning, I was like, I'm not going to do this 30 years. I'm getting out. Mm-hmm. I'm getting out. I'm not going to do 30 years, man.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I was able to keep my strength.
Yep.
Through saying I'm not going to do 30 years. I don't know when I'm getting out, but I'm not going to do 30 years. Yeah. You know, I kept saying, well, exercise. Get me through this. Get me through it. It took more than that.
Mm-hmm. What else? What did it take?
Well, it was the exercise. It was the people that I surrounded myself with from the streets, you know, and my grandmother.
Yeah.
My grandmother, my mom.
What about your kids?
My kids were relatively young. They were young at the time. You know what I'm saying? But as they got older, then yes, I relied a lot on them, you know, to come see me and stuff once they were grown.
Yeah. And so, you know, you weren't able to win the appeal. Unfortunately, that law is not retroactive. When did you decide, I'm going to get into real estate when you came home?
Well, because I was already doing real estate before I left.
Right.
But I wanted to get sharper.
Yeah.
And it was a guy named David Tedder. And David Tedder was a guy who introduced me to, what was his name of it that he called it? Anyway, so what you basically do, you basically find someone who has good credit. They don't have the money to put down on the place. You give them the money. They get the place in their name. You're 50% owner. You put the down payment down, they make the monthly payments. At the end of 12 months or 18 months, they refi it and give you your money back plus your interest, or they sell it. Or you end up with the property.
That's killer. You're the bank. You're acting as the bank.
Exactly.
All right. I want to talk about this on the Patreon because I always like to show people, you know, when I talk to guys like you, how sharp you are. You became a millionaire legally.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a tragedy in a way, what happened to you. I mean, certainly you deserve to sit down and do some time. You did a lot. This is the consequence. The consequences were also the benefits of being first in on the American crack boom.
Yes.
You got to make money that a hustler, even the sharpest dope dealer, will never make now.
Of course.
But you had to do more time than you should have.
Yes.
I don't know what more to ask you except just to say it's been a pleasure.
Man,
it's been a pleasure.
It,
and you seem like you're doing great and life is, you know, are you cherishing it or
I am.
Okay.
You know, I want to say this, man, that I didn't write this book to glorify the game. It's not to glorify. I don't wish this on anyone. I don't want anyone to have to do what I did for 27 years. You know, man, I drill even though my kids are my kids ain't saints, you know, by no means, but they're good kids and they work and they hard workers, you know, and I tell them, hey, don't get in trouble because I did enough time for you guys. And I preach it to my friends, children. I did enough time for all you guys. You know, it's another way. It's a better way. I'm not glorifying this at all. This is my testimony and a deterrent from people to think that they can do what I did. You know, I just see so many garbage stories. And it's like, that's garbage. You know, and I said, I can tell my story's better than that. I just happen to be in a smaller market, but I'm in a market when things are genuine, authentic. You know, you're not gonna find a James Beasley in New York, Florida, Ohio. You're not gonna find a James Beasley in Los Angeles. You know, they got a few they got a few smart guys. You know, and I always tip my hat to this one guy, man, and I say he's one of the smartest guys that I ever met from Los Angeles, and that's Michael Harrio Harris.
I've heard of him.
He's a very smart guy. He's one of the sharpest guys that I ever met out of Los Angeles, man. You know.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people on the show, obviously. A lot of dudes that were, you know, thick, really, really in it. But none quite like you know.
Exactly.
I mean, even when you look at the structure, you know, the black guys from New York, Harlem, none of them had straight Colombian connects. They always had Dominican middlemen. You know, they did well. You know, they were making crazy money and living that fast life, but it usually ended horribly.
Yes.
Tons of murders, life in prison, a lot of killings, you know, suffering in prison. Bay Area cats just do a flyer. Even in the hell of prison, I don't know. It's the swag. It's the game, man. It's the West Coast. It's just a better way to live.
You know, it's crazy because within the system, you know, and I tell people it's sad because we segregate ourselves. You know, when you go to jail, the institution hands you a rule book. Here you go. But that's not the rule book that gets you through. You know, it's the other rule book you get when you come in and somebody says, "Where you from?" "I'm from the Bay." "Your people over there." You know, you come in, white guy. "Oh, the white guys are over there." You know, this is the white guy's phone, black TV, white TV, Mexican TV. You go in the chow hall, black sit over there, white sit over there, Mexicans, Asians sit over there. They don't have to police us. We police ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah, what are we doing, guys?
Exactly. We segregate ourselves in jail, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the excuse is like, well, this is how we keep order. That's what they'll tell you.
Yeah, but you know, it's like it's a lot of division.
Yeah.
It's a lot of division. It's a lot of division, man. And and a lot of it, I think, even started from the state. From the state pen, and it spills over to the feds, because the feds, when, you know, back in the day, if you went to the feds, you were somebody.
For sure.
Feds take everybody now.
Everybody.
It's rejects.
Yeah.
Like, man, you're in the feds. What are you doing in here?
You had a pistol. That's all it took.
Man, I met a guy, man, that literally had 6 grams of crack cocaine, and he was in the feds doing a 10-year sentence.
Yeah.
You know, so again, you know, a lot of it is like, you know, we segregate ourselves, and it's bad, man. It's you know, and I think again, a lot of it comes from the state. You know, it didn't come from the feds. It came from the state, where the California is split up.
Yeah. The
way it's split up.
The politics.
Yeah, the politics is, you know, Bloods, Crips, you know, Norteños, Mexican Mafia, you know, Serranos.
Yep.
You know, that's where all the division comes from. It started in that state pen.
Yeah.
Well, crabs in the bucket.
Yeah.
And it's spilt over and just is watered down the federal system, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that, and as you say, like, the drug game isn't what it used to be, but that beast still needs to keep eating, you know, that bureaucracy, the prison industrial complex. They need bodies. Okay. There's no more James Beasleys, but there's a guy who's been locked up 3 times and he's got 6 grams of crack and now his points are crazy. Let's take him. You know?
That's and that's what they're doing. And that's why it's like, I've never seen a book that explained just what we talked about, the sentencing guidelines and this. Books don't talk about that. Even if you could go back to all the people that you've interviewed, Johnny, how many have actually broke that down? How we just broke it down?
Not many. That's why I created this show. So we could actually break down how you move up in the drug game like you did.
You know, but you gotta know the consequences.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know the consequences of what you're facing. You know, so that's my job. My job now is to advocate for that, you know, to be able to reach out to the community and tell people, hey, look, this is what you're facing, man.
Yeah.
You know, and now the biggest thing that's happening now is that I'm about to embark on wellness, mental wellness.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, the thing with, you know, we used to use the word, the R word. We can't use it anymore, which was, you know, a lot of these kids are suffering from mental wellness.
Yeah.
You know, they're using these drugs, these pills. Yeah. You know, I went through a period where it was stress. You know, it was stress for me, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know what I was going through in prison, where I was just so stressed out, you know, where I was running to the doctor every day like, oh, man, my neck hurt, my back hurt, this hurt, that hurt. And they said to me one day, man, there's nothing wrong with you medically. We're going to send you to psych services. And I was a little embarrassed about it, you know. Yeah. And I went to psych services. They did an evaluation. They said, man, there's nothing wrong with you. And I would call home and tell my grandmother, she says, your nerves. So old people call it the nerve. Yeah. Now today it's not nerves, it's wellness. Yeah, it's mental wellness. Yeah. It's stress.
Mental illness, yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I'm embarking on now, to try to help the young people, you know, to deal with that. You know, it's like, you know, I have a friend, you know, her son got in trouble, and, you know, for some minor stuff, just minor stuff. And they were going to 3-strike this kid out. Oof. And, you know, she got a good lawyer and went to bat, you know, for him. And they were saying, hey, he doesn't need prison. He needs a program. Yeah. They put him in a program that saved him. Good. And so, but he's just one that got saved. So my mission is to try to save as many as I can from entering into the prison system. Let's try to help them. The biggest thing now is this fentanyl crisis that we're dealing with. Fentanyl is probably, believe it or not, fentanyl is probably big as the AIDS epidemic. It's killing just that many people.
And the epicenter, just like AIDS, San Francisco.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, I'm throwing my hat in as an ambassador for San Francisco, man, to try to clean up this fentanyl crisis.
Well, it's one of the greatest cities on earth, in by far the best state on earth. And, you know, I had to move out because I need to wait for things to get better. But I'm glad that you're helping, and I'm glad you're staying. And there needs to be, Black people need to stay in San Francisco and stay in the Bay. And I also, through your entrepreneurship, that's another thing that that's what we're going to talk about on the bonus episode, because nothing keeps you on the straight and narrow and out of prison like money, like your own business, you know?
Hey,
and it's a terrific business that you have, the real estate.
Yeah, okay? we'll talk about it in the bonus.
But let me plug the book, okay? So, yeah, go get it right now. Deep Rooted by James Beasley Jr. It's such a San Francisco story. And if you love the Bay, and if you love California, if you love the genre, and my listeners do, it's available on Amazon.
Yes.
Of course, that's where I bought it. And I breezed through it. It's a great read. Do you have social media? Can they follow you there?
So the book is on, of course, Amazon, as Johnny said. The book is also on my website, jamesbeasleyent.com. You can get it there, or Amazon. If you're in the Bay, you can go to Marcus Bookstore and get it.
Awesome.
You know, I'm on Instagram as D-Rooted. DROOTED. Page is open.
Yep.
You know, I got 21,000 followers. You know,
and the internet's going to see this, man. You're going to get a lot more. So all those links will be in the description. James, it's a pleasure, man.
Thank you for having me, Johnny. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And we're going to switch over to the bonus now. Patreon.com/TheConnect Show for a quick little wrap-up chat with James. Man, killer episode.
Thank you,
I
man.
appreciate it, G. Take care.